everyone. My name is Parth Pitani, and I'm the host for Robot Forward Warehousing Podcast. And today I'm joined by Mark Taylor from
Hey,
Warehouse Republic. He's a good friend. We met. We have been meeting for a while. We have many meetings, and I think one of the last meetings was at Modex, and it was always fun to hang out with him. And he's one of the operators that I always look up to when it comes to automation. He's my sounding board, if you will, when he thinks about when I come with like hyper crazy ideas, like does it make sense? Does it not make sense? And Mark is always nice to me, always provides good information and how to think about it. So I really appreciate his time joining us here on this podcast today. Help us think through how operators are thinking about robotics and automation in the warehousing operations. So, Mark, why don't you go ahead and give a quick intro about yourself as well?
sure. Mark Taylor. I founded Warehouse Republic in 2018 as I started as an FBA seller and was sending in products to Amazon and figured out very quickly that we needed to have more control over our supply chain, our part of the supply chain. And so we worked with a friend of a friend and we started seeing good results for us and thought, well, this could work for other people. And it has, and it did, and continues to do so. And so now we are just a third-party logistics company that focuses really on small, medium-sized businesses. Most all of our customers started by selling on FBA, Amazon, or as FBA sellers, I should say. And then a lot of them have now moved on to more omni-channel strategies. And so really what we found was that at the very, very beginning, almost everything we did was business to business, carton in, carton out, container in, pallet out, that type of stuff. And as we've had our customers start to move to a more omni-channel strategy, we found ourselves getting a lot more into pick and pack.
Makes sense.
Direct to consumer
Awesome.
fulfillment.
So, from FBA to a 3PL, definitely an evolution, I feel like, and I think it has been a journey. I think this is where I really like to learn. I think I was an operator for a few years, and I was like, oh man, that's a hard job. So let me ask you this: what kept you passionate over this many years to be in this industry and keep pushing the barriers in this industry?
I mean, I think there's something very visceral about warehousing. So it's like I've never been. It's like I understand the principles of marketing and how to capture your numbers and okay, well, if something starts to work, you pour gas on it, and if it doesn't, and then you do these small experiments. I understand theoretically, but I don't like it as much as if you move a pallet from one side of the warehouse to the other side of the warehouse. It's there. Like it's very definite. The job is done. If something comes into the warehouse, whether it leaves, scheduled, unscheduled, or in somebody's pocket, it somehow leaves. So I like that. I like that level of black and white in the business. And then, I think as I've gotten in here, I mean, it's the people, the operators that I get to be friends with and work with and communicate with, very similar mindsets and the way they look at the world. And so I don't know, you kind of, in your friend group, you say you find your tribe. Well, I think I've kind of done the same with my work life.
Oh, nice, awesome! No, that's awesome. Yeah, it's always fascinating to see the different journeys that bring everyone into the warehousing industry or warehousing automation or warehousing operations. So it's always I like to learn about the stories that brought them to this space. Now the podcast theme is around robotics and automation. So let's change gears, and I think this is where I've been talking before to you as well. Like I really feel you have a future looking view of each operations when it comes to automation and robotics, but at the same time you're cautious. You want to make sure what is right for your business and which is the right approach to do it. So let's start with one thing that I always think from an operator perspective, or what do you think from an operator perspective, is when is the right time to think about automation and robotics for 3PL?
I mean, I think the right time is to start planning if you're in the industry immediately. And I mean, if labor's not going to get any cheaper. It's also harder and harder to come by good people. And I mean, that's not, that's like a broken record. If you've been paying attention the last, 5 years, that's what everybody's having a problem with. We're not moving away from, you know, packages showing up on your door. It's becoming more and more frequent. It wasn't the death knell to retail. Like, everybody thought it was going to be brick and mortar, but, I think that if you want to succeed in this business as a 3PL operator, there are some people out there who have very manual operations who are making great money, and they will continue. And those, by the way, are few and far between. But even those guys really look at, they're constantly looking at, okay, what about this? What about that? When does it make sense?
Mm.
And I think that it's a multi-year process to figure out not only how to get into automation, but what automation suits you. And then you have to learn some things like, well, you need to slot your customers, and like once you deploy automation, it's like, well, now you're refining the type of customer that you can even work with. For instance, if you've got a big non-conveyables warehouse, then your automation is going to be probably a lot of AGVs and stuff like that. I mean, but it's like if you've got a very highly, like a pharmaceutical, fulfillment type situation where you're doing pharmaceutical type drugs and very small things, then you can likely go very heavy on conveyance and pick automation.
Yeah. Actually, that's you hit a two good points that actually are on top of my mind right now, because I just came from talking to different customers, and I think labor availability is definitely becoming a big issue. Even if you get labor, I think the quality of labor is not the best always. Like when it comes to forklift, auto pickers, or like driving the pit equipment, I think you need someone who is trained, who can drive properly, because they can run into a rack and bring down the whole rack down. So you always want that quality people. Um, so labor availability is an issue, and I think I can see that everyone is feeling that pain across the industry, from like all the way to from Inland Empire in California to all the northeast. I
Certainly.
think everyone in between are facing that. It's not just a regional problem anymore.
Yes.
Some region might be facing it more just because of how the local laws are, but I think everyone is facing it.
Well, and to kind of build upon that, it's what it is. I mean, you've got these minimum wages keep on going up and going up, and I think 5 years ago, I can't believe it's already been 5 years, but I believe it was 5 years ago, Amazon said we're going to do $15 an hour minimum wage for any of our warehouse workers, and everybody around the country was like, "Oh my gosh, that's incredible!" But it it forced people in the industry to kind of move up, and so it's like our starting labor when we began was around $14 an hour, and then now it exceeds. I mean, it's gone up significantly, since COVID, and so you've got guys that typically start 17, 18, and then work up, very quickly. But it's like you see, even then though, so you look at like California, for instance, now you're competing with fast food, and if you've got, I think if you've got more than 50 locations of I don't know the ins and the outs of the rules or the law, but I mean, if you have X number of locations, if you're of X size, then the minimum wage that you have to pay your employees is $20 an hour. And so now, as a warehouse operator, we have to think about, okay, well, how do we work so that, we can now, attract this person, this employee to not go and work for Chick-fil-A or In-N-Out or, Panera, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And we're constantly kind of at the bottom. And like what I really, it's like every time we raise our minimum, like what we're hiring people at, it's because that's kind of where the rest of the market is floating to. And so it's like, you're not really you're not differentiating your job in a way. So just based on the labor rate, you're not really differentiating it, but like to where these guys are waking up to like, I have a great job. I'm XYZ above market, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so where I'm going with this is like, I remember in pre-COVID, you could still go to Uline and you could do a pickup. You could order something, and they were like a mile away from our warehouse. So we would go in there, and everybody was so excited. Everybody was very like on the ball. Everybody was in motion, had a mission, very focused. And you realize that like Uline is paying people more than $10 an hour over what the rest of what we would pay our warehouse
Yeah.
worker. And that was where they'd start them. And so what I really kind of think, like my long-term vision for automation is that, what we're going to do is we're going to eventually figure out how to automate so many aspects of the warehouse that we're going to basically be able to hire fewer people. You can't, because you're never, in my opinion, in the immediate future, you're not going to get rid of all your employees. Nor do I think you really want to. I don't.
That's music to me. That's why I have my podcast name as Robot Forward and not like something
Right.
else, because I think robots are going to be part of warehouses, but humans are going to be important as well.
Right. And so I think the shift in thinking, though, is that now, like, I think robots are actually going to be able to allow us to pay the people that we do employ much higher than like a typical market rate. And for a time, I believe that's going to be a benefit, a competitive advantage for warehouses that adopt early, because depending on who you talk to, there's somewhere, and let's just say the number that's in my head is 24,000 3PLs in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And the vast number of those are very small. I mean, very small, like less than 150, less than 150, 100,000 square feet. And that means that, all of them have customers. And so it's going to take a long time for that market consolidation to happen. And I think there's going to be a period of time for the warehouses that actually are able to bring in the correct automation for their system. I believe that they will really have benefits in accuracy, speed, and certainly in safety. And I believe in doing that, they'll also be able to pay the employees that they do have on staff more than what the competing unautomated warehouses that are basically still like throwing labor at it.
Makes sense. And I think that's one of the aspect. I actually had a question around to you was around the employment consideration when you think about automation. I think you did provide a very good color on it. That it really helps. If you have the right automation, you can always pay more for the individuals coming to the warehouse. That provides you a competitive advantage, and also the individuals that are coming in will also enjoy working with you, because working with the 3PL, because now the most labor intensive works that are usually done manually might be replaced by robots that can really help them. They don't have to just, because for me, the way I always think about it is like, if I'm paying $20 an hour for an individual to walk the warehouse, they can still make $20 an hour driving for Uber or doing food delivery. So it's always interesting to see what motivations they have to come to a warehouse. And I think working with technologies and working with new robots always excites them to work on that. So thank you for providing that color for sure. But I think as we talk about robots and automation, I think um, if you have to, as a 3PL operator, if you have to start somewhere about putting automation in terms of operations that you have, where would you start?
We're still very much in the kind of the evaluation of we recently just hired, so it's like, I mean, and you've said this, I think you've said this very, very smartly. The first automation is the automation that you already have at your fingertips, and that's not machines, it's not robotics, it's really the automation of information, and your ability to really dial in and understand like how your WMS can work for you. And if your WMS doesn't really work for you, then there are so many options right now to go out there and find WMSs that are very, very forward thinking, and like their use of like predictive put away and predictive like just picking and stuff like that, and like slotting. So it's like they're if you're not using your WMS to its fullest capability,
Yep.
As it relates with your operation, that certainly is the first and the cheapest place to start.
Great.
And not to mention your operation will be much better for it.
Mhm.
And then I think you get to a place, and a lot of people, by the way, we went through this where it's like, okay, well, we could go in and we could read all the Q&A, all of the FAQ sections, and watch all the videos in our WMS's treasure trove of information, and you still might not click. And so this is one of those roles where it's like we advocated internally for hiring someone who is very knowledgeable, not only in our particular WMS and software stack, but we also someone who had started from the bottom and then grew it to where it was doing a 28,000 fulfilled, orders fulfilled per day on a peak day type of situation. And so when we brought him in and we said, hey, this is going to be a small, we want to go from this very small concentration of orders that we know we're not doing very well, and we want to basically make it go much better. And then so from there, you put the right processes in place and the right mentality in place, and then you start scaling that up to where it's like now you have this mass of orders where now it makes sense to make the jump and send it over to and start to look at an automation system or some kind of automation. And depending on whether you go with AMRs or ASRS or whatever, it's a heavier lift at the very beginning.
Yes. Yeah.
But for instance, the AMRs, the Locusts and the it's now I guess Ocado, formerly Six River, the Chucks and everything like that. Those are some of the easiest things to deploy. But they also they get you great gains, but if you go through the heavier lifting of putting together an ASRS system like an AutoStore or once again Ocado or one of those, they have the potential to take you much further from efficiency and throughput.
Agreed.
And so, and then the other thing that I was speaking with a fellow operator the other day, and he told me, he said, I am no longer, he says, if a landlord won't sign a 10-year lease with me, I won't talk to him. And so, and so the idea being that when you're building a 3PL, if you stay in a place for a couple of years, then you have to move, then it's you really eat into your costs, and then you have to move again. And so it's every 3 to 5 years, and maybe after 4 or 5 years, you've got everything humming, and then the landlord says, oh, by the way, we're going to increase rent 50% or whatever it may be. And then now you feel like you have to maybe go a little further out. So I think looking at it from the perspective of that longer bake, it's if longer leases are becoming kind of more of the norm, now automation also starts to make a lot more sense, because you say, look, we're going to go into this building, we're going to sign a 10-year lease. That machine's going to be, or that system is going to be paid off in 6 months, 24 months, 36 months, 48 months, whatever it may be. And then now you still have a lot of runway afterward to really make sure that you continue to get your money's worth out of that machine. Or that's
actually a very interesting perspective. So what's the usual lease? Is it 5 years, 7 years landlord lease?
I mean, it really depends. We just signed a 3.5 year. The one that we're in right now is a 3.5 year. And so it's coming up for renewal in March. And so we've got some big decisions to make. Do we, do we want to, do we want to stay, or do we want to grow? And so, but yeah, I think 3, 4, 5 year leases are pretty common.
Okay. And that's actually, it's a very interesting perspective, because now actually I always thought, and I think in the industry, everyone thinks that financial metrics is a key driver for automation, but many times it's one of the metric that really helps you drive the automation. Like you mentioned about the lease. I think lease is another factor which could be a deciding factor. No, I don't think so. I want to put the automation, or I want to put the automation. If you have to build few bullet points, if you will, what goes into that decision about automation? So one is financial metrics, ROI. Second is your lease terms. What else would you think about while making a decision?
Your product. So your product mix.
Okay, product mix.
Certainly that. I mean, because as we said earlier, if you're working with larger products that don't fit in a particular on a conveyor, if they're non-conveyables, then it's you're never going to put a conveyance system in.
So that also, I think, ties back to the contract that you have with your customers as well, correct?
Well, so this is I think an interesting thing, because what's happened is the people who have automation, the GXOs of the world, the FedExes, the UPSs, the DHL, those are ones that they will. I mean, even NFI, for instance, those guys, they will have a customer many times, many cases, maybe not DHL, but they will have the customer pay for the system. And so they may like have, I think, Bastion did their deal with Puma with AutoStore. It's on all over YouTube. You can go check it out.
Correct. The Cal cartridge one, right? In
Yeah,
India.
It's Cal cartridge, and that was purchased by NFI.
Correct.
And, yeah. So anyway, so NFI was working, but I mean, Cal cartridge didn't outlay the capital to buy that system. I mean, that system was, it was assigned to a customer, and the customer funded it. Now, in the cases of like, UPS and FedEx and whatever automation they may have now, they're a publicly traded company, so their access to capital is very, very different.
That is true.
But my point is you've got all these big companies at the top who have invested umpteen, $1 million in automation. And so then you come down and you get to like the still very large 3PLs, but not necessarily, they can still afford it. But it's a much more strenuous decision, but they can still also lean on their customers to like sign a contract that's going to be X number of years. So they know that they're going to be able to pay for that.
Makes sense.
As you keep moving down market, when you get to the medium size and the smaller 3PLs where I play, you're looking at a lot more of no contract in terms of like it may be month to month and you charge the customer a little bit of a premium. Or, you've got these single year contracts, or, everybody wants a 2 to 3 year contract, but that's hard for a customer for the smaller customers to stomach, because they may be growing so fast that they may outgrow you. If you don't have millions of square feet under management or several 100,000 that you're willing to devote to these guys. Wow. And so the smaller 3PL then has to really agonize. So not only do I have to say, okay, do we have the current customer mix that's going to work for this situation? And if we do, great. Like maybe we can justify the investment. Okay, well then what happens if half of these people leave? Well, then what are you going to do? Do you have the means or the sales funnel to attract? What happens if we have another like post-pandemic hangover where everybody's like, completely they've overbought and now they're just selling down. And so there's a big migration from doing business in California for whatever reason. So when you really like as a 3PL like myself, as an owner of that, when you look at it, it's really challenging, because you say, all right, well, we're going to make this investment. It's almost like you're purchasing rack. It's like you have to get it to that place where it's like, well, it doesn't matter. I mean, we're going to only attract customers that are going to fit in that racking. We're only going to attract customers that fit in this, or we're only going to go after those type of customers. But then fully knowing that, like, once you commit to that, you have to be okay with, putting it off on, shutting that system down if you decide to change your business model. Or selling it off. I mean, which is, kind of what we're seeing with Pitney Bowes, for instance, is like, they're getting out of a lot of their e-commerce fulfillment stuff. And so they've shut down some of their automation systems. And that's not because it was bad. That's because they decided, look, no, actually we're making like, this is our focus. This is our bread and butter, not this thing that we committed this automation, these 2 facilities with automation in. The issue there, though, is that like I don't have 2 facilities worth of automation. I can just say, that was a fun experiment. It's like that's really the tolerance for like making the right decision is so much more stringent for me as an operator.
I can see that. I mean, it's too much pressure as well. Like, am I making the right decision? Because no one has crystal ball that they can predict future, right? So
right.
But what you have is the existing information, existing parameters and variables on your hand, and to make a decision out of it. Yeah.
And a lot of it is a bet. I mean, it's like my hypothesis is this.
Correct. Yeah.
See, and just as an example as to how fast hypotheses can change, we were absolutely right that there was a big demand for 3PLs that were very specific to handling FBA customers. Well, once Amazon kept on going down the lower hanging fruit, and then all of a sudden they had all this warehousing space, Amazon Warehousing and Distribution was born. And so they decided that they also were just going to go ahead and like service. They were going to basically come after exactly what we do. And, I mean, there there are always ways to compete against the behemoth. It's
Yeah.
like, we're personalization, get us on the phone. We can, you get your data. There are plenty of things like that you can do to differentiate yourself. And I mean, and at the end of the day, our entire warehouse, square feet and everything that we, that's moved in a, from 8 a.m. to 7 a.m. in one of their fulfillment centers. So, I mean, like,
Yeah, makes sense.
or 8 a.m. to 7 a.m.
Yeah.
7 a.m. to 8 a.m. That's the amount that they move in an hour.
Yeah, that is true.
And so, and so it's like, we're such a rounding error on what they do.
Yeah.
But when you have 24,000 of these little rounding errors, or 22,000, or whatever it may be,
Mm.
it adds up to a really large thing. And so it's like, as we look to the future in this industry, I think we're gonna see a lot of consolidation. And I think the people that are going to be consolidating very well, they're going to be those that understand a suite of automation. And what I mean by that is it's not enough to just make it to where your lines per hour that you process goes to 150 or 200 per person or whatever. It's okay. Well, then do those have to be shipped in boxes? Because now how are you forming 200 boxes per person?
Yeah.
So then you have to go to a pack size or whatever, one of those type of companies where it's just like it goes down, it gets scanned, and it gets wrapped up into the box, and then something slaps a label on it. And then are you rate shopping? Because now you have to sort to DHL, to UPS, to FedEx, and to OSM or whatever,
Yeah.
USPS. And so it's like you have to, like, no one is doing this tip like tip to tail full service completely integrated system.
Makes sense. And I think that's you bring up a very good point. I think one of the things that I'm personally, when I think about automation, is it's great that it improves your picking operations. Usually everyone starts at picking because it usually costs you 55 to 65% of your labor cost. So everyone starts at picking. But then what is the next thing, right? Let's say someone, a mid-sized 3PL automates their picking operations. Automates as in maybe they put in auto store solution and or some kind of OCODA or ASRS solution. So they now have a goods to person solution, which brings the goods to an individual who can then pick it, pack it to a tote, like pick it to a tote or pack it to an outbound container. But if that throughput increases, how is the outbound making sure that they are able to catch up, right? Are they finding new ways to create boxes, or adding new conveyance so they can build work in progress or build the whip? So those are the definitely criterias from a design perspective that needs to be done. But I think for me as a designer, I always get, as an engineer, I always get pigeonholed into design. But I think there are other factors that you always have, and you laid out very clearly that, hey, there are factors like cost, lease, mix that always go into automation decision making. It's not just the design that improves, but overall we have to think about as an operator. You also mentioned about GXOs of the world. I think they can have a rounding error that one side is not improving well. It's okay, we'll close the automated side.
Right.
But at a mid-sized to small side customers, you can't have that, and completely makes sense around
Well, and in the pyramid, like they are like up here, and everybody else is,
yeah.
the butt of it. I mean, there's a ton, there are way more people, and far more. There's far more square footage and far more operators out there that everybody's looking to as the opportunity.
Yeah.
And so I'll say a couple things. So it's like, at Modex, you and I walked around. We walked around for a couple days, and I think either you or I said it, but it was basically it's billions and billions of R&D for solutions that are looking for problems.
Yes. Oh, I should bookmark this comment. Yes.
Yeah, and it is, because it's like that. It's every single one. You're like, well, I mean, I can see that being a very specific problem for this one operator I know of. Maybe there are a lot more I don't know of. I'm sure there are, but like it's really a lot of solutions looking for problems. And the bet is that they want to figure out how to penetrate that market and how to appeal to the smaller operators, because that's where the opportunity is.
Correct.
And the broader opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, it's no different than if you know, there's a very finite part of the population that is able to take caviar
Yes.
and you know afford it and everything like that, and you
Yeah.
know, and then all of a sudden it's like as you go down, it's like, well, how do we make this Coke for everybody?
Yeah.
And the other thing, you know, I want to kind of back up and what you were
Mhm.
talking about of like designing the system.
Mhm.
Uh, it's nothing more than throughput accounting, and if you it's everything that happens within the walls of the warehouse it's a manufacturing process. It is steps, and each part has, you know, all it is finding the bottleneck, relieving that bottleneck, and then finding where the bottleneck moves to. And so that you know, that throughput aspect of it, it's like, I don't know if you ever read Eli, I think it's Eli Goldratt's The Goal.
Mhm.
Very simple book, but it's all about throughput accounting. It's just like identify the bottleneck, and as soon as you move that bottleneck, well, now the bottleneck is no longer picking, now it's box formation. Okay,
Yep.
well, now that you move box formation, oh well, now it's back to picking, and then it's like, okay, so and
Yeah.
so on and so forth, and
Yeah.
it's a never ending pursuit.
Yeah, that is true. And I think that's one of the things I always tell my team is like solving in warehousing is not like a end point or like a full point. It's pretty usually iterative. You solve for something, something shows up, and you solve for next thing. You keep
Mhm.
improving each and everything. There is no like an end point to it. So that I think you mentioned it clearly that it's iterative and the back out and the picking and the back out kind of problem.
Yep.
So I think this was really helpful, Mark. Really, I think for me it was really good to get into your mind as an operator, learn about what things into go into your thinking about the decision making or automation, because I am an automation robotics enthusiast, but I also understand that it's not the magic spoon or magic pill that will solve all the problems. Um, so as you look towards the future, and I think just to paint a picture for us, right? As you look towards the future, as a warehouse operator and knowing a few benefits of automation and robotics, how do you see those integrating into, like, how do you see automation integrating into warehousing space, and uh, what does the future look like according to you for small to mid-size operators?
Well, um, I think, you know, the operators out there that are currently like doing manual and starting to like dip their toes into automation and whatnot, that's going to they're going to continue to be fine. And I think the uh, what's happening, I think you know, this is somewhat of an aging industry, and so I think a lot of the people that are the smaller mom and pop operators are trying to find sell, but you know, buyers for their thing. And at the end of the day, you kind of look at it and you're like, there's not much we're buying here. We're buying a lifestyle business. And so a lot of those there's going to be attrition where I think a lot of those are just going to decide that, you know, you know, it's fine. We did our thing, and they may sell
Mm.
assets. They may sell a couple of their, you know, their client list or something like that. But there's just not a lot for a lot of those. And then, I think you're going to slowly start to see some, like the really small ones. I think they're slowly going to start to age out and go by the wayside. And then you're going to get to this mid tier where you've got good operators who've got solid businesses, and they will probably be acquired as a part of, you know, larger kind of roll up strategies. But you know, I mean, there are new niches of warehouse operators popping up all the time. Like right now, probably the hottest subset of warehousing is frozen goods, like cold chain and stuff like
Mm,
that, because
interesting.
you know, you can tell you can tell how in demand and a part of the industry is by whether or not they're willing to pay referral fees
Oh wow. Okay.
if you
Interesting.
like refer them business.
Yeah. 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 Very
And the
interesting.
last I heard, none of the cold chain people are paying any referral fees because they're like, they have something that they know is in high demand.
Oh, very
So
interesting.
I don't know if I really answered your question, but I mean, I think it's going to be a combination thereof. I think some people are just going to kind of like, you know, quietly go into the night. I think some other people are going to be able to sell,
Mm,
and I think there's going to be a you know, a large consolidation piece of this. But I think the boxes are going to continue to get bigger. The warehouses are, you know, and when you start talking about single 3PL operations, the most respected people I know like identify uh, that 250 to 350,000 square feet is like a really good 3PL footprint. And then those same people will say, like, once you get to 400,000 square feet, you can't, like, a single team can't really, it's very challenging for a single team to effectively manage a multi-tenant warehouse. And so I think the giant behemoths, I think are going to get a little bit smaller. I think you're seeing, even with Amazon still got their giant FCs, but they've got their regional ones where it's like, an order comes in and it's on the dock in 11 minutes. Like those are a tenth to 10% to 15% the size. And so I think they're going to probably, lean into that a little bit more.
Makes sense.
But I think your 25,000 square foot operators, your 35,000, your 50,000, I think those smaller ones, I think those are going to, when I say the boxes are going to get bigger, I think they're going to start to move towards that, 150, 250, and then continue that 250, 350 side.
Makes
That's
sense.
really just my conjecture. I mean, I'm probably wrong.
No, but this is good to know, right? I think no one in the industry actually thinks from that perspective. And at least specifically, I can say from automation and robotics side, the individuals that I talk to, the leaders that I talk to, they're pretty much the automation and robotics leader. They are just they because of what they are into, they're just looking at the throughput problem, process optimization problem, right? They are not looking at the network strategy or the capacity problems. They're just looking at, okay, I'll put my robot and it will improve your process. That's the blinders they always put on
Sure.
when they go and try to sell any robots or services around robots or automation. That, hey, whatever your big network strategy could be, but within this warehouse, I'll improve it by X percentage. That's good to know, but few months down the line when the sale doesn't happen, you have to really come back and think about it. Why didn't it happen? Because you never had a network strategy. You put something in the pipeline thinking that this is going to be a short because there was an ROI, but you didn't think about the factors that has gone into making a decision, and that was not a sell. So I think it's always good to have this holistic approach, even though automation is solving at a one specific node, but the decisions are not made at a specific node. They are made at a network level. So it's always good to know that.
So yeah, and I know you just put a nice bow on it, but I'm gonna actually like go a little bit. I'm gonna go a little bit. If you think about the warehouse, if you've got like a heavy pick operation, like a lot of people, there's a range of revenue per square foot that people get, and it's like typically the higher revenue per square foot, usually the more people are within the walls, or the more specialized you are. So it's like, but even that requires its own set of complications. So if you've got a very clean warehouse or something like that, and it's like, and there's massive protocols, then your costs are going to be in outside, not consultants, but people, inspectors coming in and making sure that you're staying up to a code or whatever. So that's got its cost associated with it as well. But let's just take a 50,000 square foot warehouse by itself. As the owner entrepreneur, as the like, I cannot generate enough in that box to where I can pay myself a salary and I can hire somebody to leave in that thing where they basically are able to pay, I can pay a person who's trustworthy enough to open it and close it, who's got enough, wherewithal to think about like all the different little moving parts. Like I can't hire a person skilled enough to then go and take a vacation. Like it's like you see what I'm saying? So what ends up happening is like you get enough square footage under management, and then you can afford, and then now that you've spread your managerial costs over more square feet, now maybe instead of $2 a square foot per year that you're paying, yourself or whatever it may be, you're paying 25 cents or you're paying 50 cents a square foot or $1 a square foot. So it's like the more square footage you do, it's like you spread that managerial aspect across more square feet. So when I start talking about like where's everything going, it's like I think the days of the mom and pop or the lifestyle business in a warehouse, like those are going to continue. There are some operators out there that are going to continue to do that, no problem. But I think it's going to become less and less because in this market, as people get more and more sophisticated, the investments that you have to make into the warehouse to like really continue to keep up and are going to be more and more. And so yeah, it's you look at the investment in automation literally as you look at like that managerial line. So it's like you want to be able to spread the investment in automation over more square feet as opposed to less square feet.
That's good. And that's actually you make a very good point, because that's exactly the same problem that I'm recently trying to solve for, is because one of the automation we are trying to solve for is just gonna address one third of that picking area. Sorry, one third of the picking area, and for remaining two-thirds of the picking area, it's going to be manual process. So we got to justify how do we make that happen. So I think it's actually a very interesting way to look at it. But I think I have so many other topics that I want to talk to, but respecting your time, I don't want to go in,
No,
because I
no, this
actually
is
have like
great. Look, I feel like we've been talking for 30 seconds, and I'm happy. Anytime you want to have a conversation, I'm
no,
excited to have one
no,
with you.
no, I love it. I have like 5 topics that I wanted, like the 4PL model, the TikTok and the Sheen coming in, and the we have been talking about this Mexico fulfillment from Mexico that has been
Section
across the world.
321
Yeah,
fulfillment.
yeah. So many things, but I don't want to take this further. But I do want to ask you one important thing: is like uh, when I talk to you, I see a lot of thinking when you do any kind of sorry, when you do any kind of action, or when you put in your put in your thoughts, and which I appreciate it. And I think so this is, and I feel like this comes from somewhere that you read something or someone gave you an advice. So how about this, give us an advice, best piece of advice that has impacted your approach to business or just the leadership.
Uh, I mean, it's when you ask a question that big, it goes down back to simple answers, and I think it from a warehousing perspective, and I mean we don't even do a good job of this, but I think the hardest thing, someone once told me, the hardest thing in warehousing is to know exactly how much every single one of your customers is costing you to serve. So it's like if you don't know how much you're actually spending on that customer, and I mean not just the square footage, the space, but how much in labor are you charging correctly? It's like that. Most 3PLs and even us. I mean, I'm pretty sure we're doing well. Like we'll put it in a Google sheet, but I'm pretty sure we're doing well. But I mean, like from a leader, I think the two things that come to mind is never ask anybody to do something that you wouldn't yourself do, that you're not willing to do yourself, and whether that's sweeping the floors, unloading a container, whatever. And I think people who tell people to do things that they're not willing to do, there's a believability thing there, and it's a leader thing. Maybe that's silly, but for me that
No,
resonates.
of course, yeah, no, of
And
course.
then someone once told me, I had this a friend of mine who's kind of a mentor at the time. He had this really interesting idea, and he kind of sold me on it. I was like, man, that's really good. And then I went and talked to this other guy who was like, you know, if you, and it was related to cars. He said, look, if you just really like working on cars or being a part of working on cars, and then you should do this. He said, but if you're just doing this because you think it is a way to make a lot of money, I wouldn't do it. He said, because you need to basically put your time towards something that if it fails, you can like look back and you can say, at least I got to work on cars.
Oh wow, that's actually,
And
Mark,
so it's
that's
like,
actually a very solid thing. Actually, now I think about it, like at least you will not have regrets that I didn't. Oh wow, that's actually a good one. Now, thank you
so
for
you love
sharing that.
robots. And so
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
like,
yeah, that's what I was
look,
thinking.
if this doesn't go anywhere, if it doesn't, anything, at the end of the day, you're like, look, at least I got to be a part of doing cool stuff with robots.
Yeah, no, that's actually a very solid advice, and I appreciate you sharing with us. I do want to bring this to an end, because I feel like we will keep talking and talking and
We
talking.
will.
So no, again, thank you, Mark. Really appreciate you sharing time with us and just giving so much insights. I think anyone who listens to this episode will definitely get away with a lot of information from when it comes to a 3PL and how the operations work and how the decision making goes into it. So thank you for your time, and everyone who is listening to it. Mark also has a podcast, Supply Chain Saga. Please please sign up to listen to that. It's pretty amazing. He interviews a lot of individuals across the supply chain leadership space, from NFIs of the world to the other, including all the individuals who he has impacted his life. So I appreciate, and I listen to him So I really appreciate having that side of the supply chain leadership series as well. And Mark, any and thoughts or parting thoughts?
No, I mean, I'm always excited that every time, it feels like every conference or every time, every 6 months or whatever, I get to go to a new thing. It seems like smarter and smarter people are entering the industry. So I really, one of the things I love about this industry is how open people are with like sharing and trying to make it better. And like at the end of the day, the more resilient our supply chain is as a country, I mean, the better.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think I would encourage people to keep on being curious, keep on having interesting conversations, and if anybody wants to connect, I mean, or anything like that, I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, Mark is very active in LinkedIn. So yeah, thank you again, Mark, and thank you everyone for joining for today. Really appreciate you joining all, and we'll end this conversation today here.
Yeah, thank you. It was a
You have been listening to Robot Forward Warehousing Podcast with Parth Pitani. Stay connected with us by subscribing to the show on your favorite podcast player. If you like what you heard, please rate us and help us reach more warehouse robotics practitioners. Thank you for listening. Until next time.